2 o'clock. Time to start. Welcome, Geoff Kaufman. As I think everyone here probably knows, Geoff was the shanty foreman at Mystic Seaport Museum for 30 years.
Well, I was foreman for 25 of the 35 years I worked there.
Yes, and during that time, built up an amazing legacy of building up traditional music program and continuing the work that had been and really solidifying the work that had been left behind, and is now on the board of directors of the Maritime Music and Traditions Society, which has just announced the 2022 Connecticut Sea Music Festival, which is really exciting news. So next June, unfortunately, we're going to have competition again as for another New England Sea Music Festival, but really looking forward to that next June. And Geoff also has a bunch of recordings, a long catalog of great music, and is a fantastic interpreter of this tradition. And just a reminder to everyone, this is the USS Ranger, named for the first vessel of the United States Navy, which was built at the Portsmouth Naval Yard. John Paul Jones lived in Portsmouth for a time while waiting for his ship to be ready. So this is honoring part of Portsmouth's maritime tradition. And I want to take a quick moment to thank a few of our sponsors who have helped make this festival possible, besides all the donors. The Friendly Toast, Ireland on the Square, Ceres Bakery, River Run Bookstore, Kilwin's Ice Cream and Fudge, Portsmouth Feed Company, the Portsmouth Brewery, Treehouse Toys, Annabelle's Ice Cream. If you're in the Portsmouth area, please visit them, say hi, and thank you. And with that, Geoff Kaufman, everybody.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Chris. And I'll just say that along the way, we brought in a number of good singers to become shanty singers at the Seaport, and Chris was one of them for a period of time. So he graced Mystic Seaport with the great voice he has, and his kind of passion for this music, which has led to the revival of the Portsmouth Festival. So thanks to Chris for all of that. Let me start with a Tennyson poem quote from Ulysses, as was performed by Liam Clancy once at our festival, and it just seems like a good starting place. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And from that, I'd like to stay on that side of the puddle and do a song from Gordon Smith, who was a BBC fellow who wrote this song kind of honoring the coastline of England and Ireland and Scotland coming down to the sea. But I love singing this song wherever I might be, particularly when I'm sailing down east in Maine, where the terrain looks a lot the same. So. Come by the hills to the land where fancy is free. Stand where the hills reach the sky, rocks meet the sea. With rivers run clear, bracken lays gold in the sun. And the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where life is a song. Sing where the birds fill the air with their joy all day long. Where the trees sway in time and even the wind hums a tune. And the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. And I usually ask people to sing that last line with me, so don't be shy. Well, come by the hills to the land where legends remain, where glories of old stir the heart and may yet come again, where the past has been lost and the future is still to be won, and the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. So come by the hills to the land where fancy is free. Stand where the hills reach the sky, rocks meet the sea, where the rivers run clear, bracken lays gold in the sun, and the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. And the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. So, from that, I would again stay over in that area for a song that was probably one of two that got me singing this repertoire. So this one is, I call it Ambletown. It shows up by different names, and it's there's a version of it out of Boston. It certainly was a song that traveled around a fair amount. But I learned it from the singing of Ed Trickett more years ago than I'd like to confess, at a house concert in New York City. And well, now Amble is a fine town with ships about the bay. Fain and very fain to be there myself today. I'm wishing in my heart I was far away from here, sitting in my parlor talking with my dear. And it's home, dearie, home, and it's home I want to be. My topsails are hoisted and I'm bound to sea. The oak and the ash and the bonny birchen tree are all growing green in the north country. And it's home, dearie, home. Well, a letter came today, but somehow I cannot speak. The proud and happy tears are rolling down my cheek. There's someone here, she said, you've been waiting for to see, with your merry hazel eyes looking up from off of my knee. And it's home, dearie, home, and it's home I want to be. My topsails are hoisted and I'm bound to sea. The oak and the ash and the bonny birchen tree are all growing green in the north country. And it's home, dearie, home. Ah, but that letter did not say if we had a boy or girl. Got me so confused, my heart is in a whirl. I'm going going back to port, we're all quickly turn around. Take the fastest ship that to Ambletown is bound, and it's home, dearie home, and it's home I want to be. My topsails are hoisted, I'm bound to see the oak and the ash and the bonny birchen tree are all growing green in the north country, and it's home, dearie home. So now if it be a girl, she shall wear a golden ring. If it be a boy, he'll live to serve the king, with his buckles and his boots, his little jacket blue. He'll walk the quarter deck like his daddy used to do, and it's home, dearie home, and it's home I want to be. My topsails are hoisted, and I am bound to see the oak and the ash and the bonny birchen tree are all growing green in the north country, and it's home, dearie home, and it's home I want to be. My topsails are hoisted, and I'm bound to see the oak and the ash and the bonny birchen tree are all growing green in the north country, and it's home, dearie home. All right. Let me put the guitar away for a while. And gee whiz, here's one more that actually was collected by James Madison Carpenter over there in Wales. But the song was remembered by Rhys Baldwin as being sung in Savannah, Georgia by a black crew bringing cargo on board the ship he was sailing on. And 50 years later, in the early 1920s, Rhys Baldwin remembered the lyrics of this song. So, as with so many of these songs, they have great choruses. This one is coming out of that black population, all call and response. So when I say you're nothing but a humbug, you say, so they say, so they say. And when I say you're nothing but a humbug again, you say, that's all I know. You're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. There's a catfish growing on a huckleberry vine, so they say, so they say. Catfish growing on a huckleberry vine, that's all I know. I said, you're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. I never seen the like since I've been born, so they say, so they say. Sailing around a fire trail cracking out corn, that's all I said, you're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. Now Dandy Jim from North Carolina, so they say, so they say. He come home for the married Dinah, that's all I know. I said, you're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. The blackbird said unto that crow, so they say, so they say. Why do you bother that farmer so? That's all I know. It's been that way since Adam was born, so they say, so they say. Digging and scratching up farmer's corn, that's all I know. I said, you're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. That blackbird said unto that crow, so they say, so they say. Don't tell the pretty girls all I know, that's all I know. It's hoist her high and hoist her dry, so they say, so they say. Oyster high for a bullgine pie, that's all I know. You're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. I said, you're nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You're nothing but a humbug, and that's all I know. And I love playing the bones with that and some other stuff I do, which comes from the black repertoire. And this, these were played on the plantation and then adopted by white men as a part of the minstrel show. And Mr. Bones in the minstrel show was the guy playing the bones and keeping up the repartee. And so whenever I'm doing any more informative show, I go into some details about that. But you guys know a lot about this stuff. So coming over to this side of the pond, I want to do a song that comes from a prelate in New Brunswick, Canada, and was written about the man who carved the figurehead for the Marco Polo. And, of course, Dick Swain, our good friend, was at one point the librarian for the university in Orono, Maine, came across the poem and said, this has to have music and it has to have an extra chorus just to make it perfect. And so he added, while my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. And so thanks to Dick for getting, pulling this out, giving it to us in this form. So beautiful. And actually, I think of Gordon Bach relating to this song because he's such an incredible woodcarver. So I sing it partly in his honor as well. I know he's sung this song. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. We'll move it up just a little bit. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. I have done my share of carving figureheads of quaint design for the olives and the ruddocks and the famous black ball line, brigantines and barks and clippers, brigs and schooners lithe and tall, but the bounding Marco Polo was the flower of them all. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. I can see that white-winged clipper reeling under scudding cloud, tramping down the hazy skyline with a norther in her shrouds. I can feel her lines of beauty, see her flecked with spume and brine as she dives her scuppers under, and that figurehead of mine. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. 'Twas of seasoned pine I made it, clear from outer bark to core, from the finest piece of timber in the mast pond on great shore. Every bite of axe or chisel, every ringing mallet welt, brought from out that piece of timber all the spirit that I felt. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. I had read of Marco Polo till his daring deeds were mine, and I say them all glowing in that balsam-scented pine. Saw his eyes alight with purpose, facing every vagrant breeze. Saw him lilting free and careless over all the seven seas. While my hands are are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. That is how I did my carving, beat of heart and stroke of hand, bringing into life and action all the purpose I had planned. Flowing robes and wind-tossed tresses, forms of beauty, strength, design, I saw them all, and tried to carve them in that figurehead of mine. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. And when my hands grow feeble and my outward eyes grow dim, I will see again those clippers reeling o'er the ocean's rim. Great white fleet of ocean rovers, wind above and surf beneath, and the Marco Polo leading with my carving in her teeth. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. While my hands are steady, while my eyes are good, I will carve the music of the wind into the wood. What a wonderful poem, and what a wonderful setting. So we'll go into whaling for a bit because, of course, working at Mystic Seaport for 35 years, I had a lot of time to spend around the Charles W. Morgan. And we talked a lot about whaling and about the whole tradition of whaling, which I will go into a little in more detail too. But among other things, of course, in 2014, after several years of fully rebuilding the Morgan, the Seaport Center sailing again. And there were a number of us who were engaged as sailing deckhands, which actually meant we went aloft and set the sails, and we did all that work alongside the 10 professional crew. And so there were 10 of us on any given leg of that trip. And the most remarkable leg of it for me, I wasn't there actually for the really remarkable leg. I gave my spot to a vice president of the museum at the time, Susan Funk, who was able to be lower in the boat that was then surrounded by humpback whales on Stellwagen Bank. And so she was there for that incredible experience. But then, after that, the vessel was in Vineyard Haven and went from there to New Bedford for the first time in over 90 years. And I was on for that leg of the trip. And we had gone aloft, sails were set, luffing because we were under tow. And we went through Quick's Hole, and then we turned up the channel. And the wind was out of the southwest, a perfect wind to drive the Morgan right into New Bedford. And so as we made that trip, actually we were going so fast that we had to do tacking drills to slow down, not to get into New Bedford too soon. And I was able to sing this song to the assembled multitude on deck for that, because it would have been appropriate for her coming home from the Pacific or from anywhere when she was in the Southern Atlantic in the latter part of her years and whatever. But she would have come by the west end of Martha's Vineyard, which we call Gayhead. Europeans called it Gayhead. It is a quina for the native Wampanoag. But coming by Gayhead and straight up the channel to New Bedford we go. And of course, I often sing Spanish Ladies as the prelude to this because this was stolen directly from Spanish Ladies, and the chorus is very, very similar. But I'm sure you guys all know that, so you could just sing along. Well, I've been a sea cook and I've been a clipper man. I can sing, I can dance, I can walk the boom. And the harpoon cuts a fine figure whenever I get in a boat standing room. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck or below till we sight gay head on old Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. I was in Talcahuano last year in a whaler. Bought some gold brooches from the girls in the bay. I bought me a pipe and they called it a meerschaum. Melted like butter on a hot shiny day. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck or below till we sight gay head on old Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. And I went to a dance one night in Old Tumbers. Plenty of girls there as fine as you wish. There were one pretty maiden chewing tobacco just like a young kitten chewing fresh fish. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck or below till we sight gay hen on old Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. Here's a health to the girls of old Talcahuano, health to the maidens of far off Maui. Let you be jolly, don't be melancholy. I can't marry you's all and choky I'd be. So we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck or below till we sight gay head on old Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go, and we'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. Rant and we'll roar on deck or below till we sight gay head on old Martha's Vineyard. Straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go.
Thank you, Geoff. I want to just take a quick minute to remind everyone, we've had some new people join us. Geoff Kaufman, I think everybody knows who he is, but longtime interpreter of maritime music, shanty foreman at Mystic Seaport for 25 years, and a legend in local sea music, not even local, worldwide sea music world. And also to remind you that the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival is run on your donations. Nearly all of that money goes to pay the performers, people like Geoff. So if you haven't already, please toss us a couple bucks in the link that I just put in the chat. Also, Geoff now has a fantastic new project. They just announced the Connecticut Sea Music Festival will happen next June. And I'm putting a link about that in the chat as well as places you can find out more information about Geoff and his music. So thank you all for joining us. We've got another 20 minutes left in this set, and so I will shut up and let the music resume. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris. So that last song ends up in Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And starting in 1829, we began to touch in at Lahaina, Maui with whale ships. And of course, young fellows, I mean, you know, maybe a few years earlier in Chris's life, if he'd been on one of those vessels, he might have taken one look at Lahaina and said, aha, I've been eating salt beef and salt pork for 6 months before I got here, maybe 9 months, and lowering in a whale boat and doing all that stuff, and this looks like a good place to take a vacation. So numbers of young men from the east coast might desert their ships, or at least temporarily leave. And so Native Hawaiians were brought aboard. And out of that actually comes the connection to John Kanaka. Kanaka is the Native Hawaiian word for human being. And so that was built into John Kanakanaka Tulaie. And it turns out that young Rev Carr, son of the earlier director of the seaport, Revel Carr, did his musicology study in Hawaii and worked out the fact that tulae in Hawaiian means stand your ground. So this was the perfect phrase for Hawaiians to talk to Hawaiians about standing where they were when they were hauling on a line. So out of all of that, the Hawaiians, 30,000 Hawaiians got on whale ships between 1829 and 1900. And they kept pretty good records. They were very proud of that part of their lineage. And I got to travel with Native Hawaiians, Native Wampanoags, and Native Alaskans in a storytelling tour back in the 90s. And along the way, in Hawaii, the Hawaiians were playing a Hawaiian nose flute. So I picked one up. And then I found out that there was a song, No Ke Ano, which was written by Hawaiian whalemen coming to the East Coast. And luckily translated by, we presume, a Yankee whalerman who knew enough Kanaka to translate it. And so we have this song, and you'll hear in the last verse, Malaka is America. So they're going to see America, and you'll hear what happens. But this is No Ke Ano from Hawaii. No ke ano ahi ahi, ke aloha la, I ka hali hali a hana mai. These are the evening hours that I love when fond memories return. O kula, he o ke iala, ke le ma. Hine hina peia. This is the day of my departure. Unfurl the sails. Ke hine hika heleu mala uaka ueka ha e mahope. Raise the anchor now, the flag flutters astern. Huli a e o e hele ka uala e ia I ka moana lipo lipo. Let us turn now and sail off across the great blue ocean. Ka ua ku ka ua aho ila e ike ia maleka ailana. Now that we've seen America, let's go home. So a little something from Hawaii. What a wonderful time I had there. And if you're familiar with the vessel Hokulea, a double-hulled voyaging canoe that was built in 1975 and then in 76 was navigated by a South Pacific islander from Satawal near Tahiti. That vessel was navigated from Hawaii to Tahiti with traditional navigational skills with no instruments. Just an amazing thing. And an 18-year-old son of the builder of the vessel was aboard for that trip. And 4 years later, he navigated Hokulea a second time with no instruments on that trip. And that inspired a rebirth of Hawaiian culture that I was able to experience. The incredible chanting. In fact, the foodways of Hawaii have had a rebirth, and there are numbers of schools that are Hawaiian immersion schools. Just a wonderful thing has happened out there. So anyway, one other whaling touch here, going down to New Zealand in this case. New Bedford, actually, whalers from Nantucket were going out, of course, early on, and were whaling all over the Pacific. But they ended up going down to what we have learned is the middle ground, and they ended up touching in various ports in New Zealand along the way, and actually early on in 1820, a couple from Nantucket went out on one of those ships and went ashore as ministers to work with the Maori population. And so they had a mission on shore, and all Nantucket whalers who came with wives aboard were welcome to come ashore. And it so happened that in the 1870s, 3 Nantucket vessels with captains' wives aboard showed up. And so in Bay of Islands, New Zealand, the 3 couples went ashore, and they had a wonderful dinner. And then the men retired into the smoking parlor, and the women retired into their parlor, and they had a wonderful rest of the evening, and along the way wrote a poem that they called the Nantucket Girls' Song. So happens that the group called Roaring Forties, who are now calling themselves 40 Degrees South, recorded a version of this song to a traditional tune that they found that worked for them. But I actually set a tune for this because I love this so much, and friends from Nantucket put me on to this song early on, so I gave it a tune. So this is the perspective of 4 Nantucket women halfway around the world from home. And, well, you'll get the drift, I think. I have made up my mind now to be a sailor's wife, to have a purse full of money and a very easy life. For a clever sailor husband is so seldom at his home that his wife can spend the dollars with a will that's all her own. So I'll haste to wed a sailor, send him off to sea, for a life of independence is the very life for me. Yet from time to time I should like to see his face, for it always seems to me to beam with manly grace. With his brow so nobly open and his dark and kindly eye, my heart beats fondly towards him whenever he is nigh. But when he says goodbye, my love, I'm off across the sea. First I cry for his departure, then I laugh because I'm free. But I'll welcome him most kindly whenever he returns, and spend with him most joyfully all the money that he earns. For he's a loving husband, though he leads a roving life, and well I know how good it is to be a sailor's wife. So, I think I want to do a song from a much more modern song, contemporary song, from John Campbell of South County, Rhode Island, who has written numbers of songs that we've sung along the way that are quite humorous and entertaining. But he says that he simply channeled this song. He's not really sure quite where it came from. And it's just, it's talking about our relationship to all that water that's out there. Any of us that go out on a vessel, we're looking at a lot of water. Those molecules of water have been around the world a lot of times, and so have all the ones that are in us. And so this is his portrayal of that relationship, called Restless Waters. where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff. So many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. Just last week we waded in the waters of the Nile, dropped our line into the brine of a South Pacific isle, and the waters underneath our bow knew Jonah and the whale is the right-hand side of Moses he left here in this pail. And the waters here within my hand once washed a mermaid's hair. Sir Francis Drake's armada sank on that ripple over there. And these three small drops upon the oar did float Ulysses home, as round and round and round the world the restless waters roam, where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff. So many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. Now this small drop of water turned the first rock into sand. This one here ran off the back of the first fish upon land. And this one graced Atlantis as it sank beneath the wave. And this one kept a vigil at 1,000 sailors' graves. So sometimes we may be rowing out upon the China Sea, or dropping pebbles in the blue from a beach at Normandy, or be wet down by a breaking wave that came from Botany Bay, as round and round and round the world the waters roam each day, where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff. So many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. So it's many's the one has left their home to sail upon the sea, seek their fortune on the waters so many miles from these. But the further that you sail away, the sooner you float home, as round and round and round the world the restless waters roam.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Just to remind everyone that this festival is run on donations. Please keep an eye on the chat for some announcements as we get towards the end of this set. And thank you again, Geoff, for joining us this weekend.
My pleasure. What a great event, really. I've had a great time and had a wonderful time sharing an hour with Ron and Natalie Days earlier today. And I actually had put them in a bit of a spot. I think they were planning on just doing their set and having me do a set. And I asked them to go back and forth so they could respond to some of the material that we've dug up at Mystic Seaport, which is really focusing on the African influence on maritime music. And I think it was really a wonderful exchange that we had. They are so wonderful to have people like them carrying on the Gullah tradition and the whole tradition of the barrier islands down south. And but it's also important for all of us to understand how much of what we sing comes out of those African roots. So that is part of that. If I'd had more time, I probably would have done Wee Pot Stow, which would have been a wonderful thing to do because lots of people know the song. But it's coming out of that later whaling tradition when the whaling focus changed from the northern oceans, the bowhead whaling that was then going on all the way to Alaska, and focused with more modern techniques, went south where lots and lots of whales, in fact more whales, would be found down in the southern waters around Antarctica. And with more modern techniques, we could kill them with harpoons from chaser boats and keep them afloat and process them and send them home on factory ships. And that's what that whole song is about. However, I like to follow that song with this one from Paul Kaplan. So I'll finish my set with this, which is Paul Kaplan's resetting of the Greenland whale fishery, but from the point of view of the whale. And so whenever I do a whaling program, I like to carry people through that entire history and talk about the incredible devastation that went on later on. And in fact, even just this weekend at Cornell in Ithaca, Katie Payne, who with Roger Payne were the first ones to record humpback whales, is doing a program of putting those songs into an incredible piece of art with colors kind of speaking to the tones of the whale songs. So Katie Payne is carrying on with her work with humpback whale songs. And of course, as a part of that, they've talked a lot about the incredible damage that was done to whales in the latter part of the 20th century when whaling was continuing and was very devastating. Thankfully, the majority, almost all of that is gone, but the whales are having a hard time recovering. So in honor of that, we do Paul Kaplan's Call Me the Whale. Call me the whale, for that's what I am, and what I aim to be. You may call yourselves the kings of the land, but I am the king of the sea, brave boys. I am the king of the sea. You came after me with your matchstick boats and your harpoons poised for the kill. When I looked you in the eye, I never saw you cry, but I know I gave you a chill, brave boys. I know I gave you a chill. And I never meant you any harm, brave boys, when I sent you to the bottom with my tail. No, I only meant to tell you you should have been at home instead of on the ocean chasing whales, brave boys, instead of on the ocean chasing whales. But you never got the message, and more you came, till I ran out of places to hide. And when your boats got so big I could not bring you down, I knew you had turned the tide, brave boys. I knew you had turned the tide. And now you hunt me down with your factory ships, and you never even touch me with your hands. In the morning I'm playing with my babies in the waves. In the afternoon I'm packed into your cans, brave boys. In the afternoon I'm packed into your cans. And you've gotten so efficient with your implements of death that now I'm barely alive. Ah, but if you treat each other the way you treated me, I think I'm going to survive, brave boys. I think I'm going to survive.
Thank you, Geoff. All right, if anyone wants to unmute and applaud for that fantastic set, please go ahead. Again, thank you, Geoff. Thank you to all the listeners. This room is going to close at the